Will the escort committee?
You can just say it.
Okay. Will the escort committee please escort Governor Hickenlooper to the podium?
You gotta say it. Trying to get the picture.
He ditched his tail of the escort committee.
I know. I'm not supposed to let him out there. Sorry. Yeah, you see, come on. Good luck, brother. So, no, I think she needs to introduce you. Just to say something. Yeah, just introduce you.
It is my pleasure and honor to introduce you to the Honorable John Hickenlooper, Governor of the great state of Colorado.
Thank you. Thank you and good morning. It's great to be back here together in the people's state capital. To the 4 new members stepping into your first legislative session, I offer you my sympathies. Oh, just kidding, just kidding. Welcome. Fortunately for you and for all of us, we'll have the leadership of Senate President Morgan Carroll, House Speaker Mark Ferrandino, Senate Minority Leader Bill Cadman, and House Minority Leader Brian Del Grosso. Another veteran hand. Yep. Another veteran hand is our great Lieutenant Governor, Joe Garcia. Our thanks to Joe and his wife Claire for sharing with him so much of his time. We are also honored to have the Vice Chairman of the Southern Ute Indian Tribe, James Olguin, and the Vice Chairwoman of the Mountain Ute Tribe, Juanita Plentyholes. Welcome to you both. I want to thank my awesome cabinet and my senior staff who are here with us today, along with all the state employees who have worked so hard, especially this year. Our thanks to everyone who has been so dedicated to the flood recovery efforts, especially the Colorado National Guard, the Department of Transportation, the Department of Public Safety, and our incredible volunteer Chief Recovery Officer, Jerry Stead. I want to recognize also his team from IHS, and we are indebted to all of you. Our thanks as well to Attorney General John Suthers and Treasurer Walker Stapleton, and to our Secretary of State, the dogged honey badger, Scott Gessler. Thank you to distinguished members of the Supreme Court of Colorado and to the Colorado State Board of Education. Denver Mayor Michael Hancock is here. Thank you, Mayor, for your incredible partnership with the state of Colorado. And also, I want to express my deep gratitude to Helen Thorpe for not just being here today, but being there every day for our son, Teddy. On behalf of all Coloradans, I want to thank the Denver Broncos for giving us something to cheer about this season. And how could we not congratulate the Colorado State University Rams, right? After that fourth quarter win over Washington State, scoring 18 points in the last 3 minutes to come from behind, that was nothing short of amazing. That victory was a reminder that when Coloradans are faced with challenging circumstances, there is no quit. Giving up, that's not going to happen. In trying times, Coloradans do what we have always done. We pull together and get it done. Colorado has always been a good place to find what you're made of. Earning your keep, making your own way, looking out for your neighbor, that comes with the territory. In Colorado, we know there will be times when we will be tested, times when we will take action that shows who we really are and what we stand for, and along the way, shows the world what it means to be a Coloradan. Lately, we've had our fair share of those times. When we gathered for our last State of the State address in the wake of the Waldo Canyon fire and the Aurora massacre, many of us thought we would never again experience a year like 2012. That was not the case. Every season of 2013 presented another unthinkable test. During the spring, our executive director of the Department of Corrections, Tom Clements, was gunned down in his home. Throughout the summer, wildfires burned the Black Forest, the Royal Gorge, the West Fork, and the Red Canyon. In the fall, we got the flood against a backdrop of politicians in D.C. who couldn't get along well enough to keep the federal government's doors open. In the winter, came the reports of a shooter at Arapahoe High School and the heart-wrenching reality that 17-year-old Claire Davis had been fatally shot. This past year, Colorado has been scorched, Colorado has been flooded, Colorado once again endured senseless, inexplicable violence, yet despite all of it, we did not let that define us. That is not our story. Our story and what we showed the world is Colorado does not shut down. Colorado does not quit. Colorado does not break. We know that there are folks out there still grieving and still recovering. We know there are people out there feeling the impact of the national economy's downturns, and we're doing everything within our power to change that. But make no mistake, the state of Colorado has not only endured, it has thrived. My fellow Coloradans, despite every unforeseen test, everything that was thrown at us, the state of our state is strong. And according to just about every forecast, trend, and study, the state of Colorado is only growing stronger. While the national economy around us remains sluggish, Colorado's unemployment has not gone up. It has gone down to the lowest level since 2008. This is our fourth consecutive year of economic growth. According to a study from the University of Colorado's Leeds School of Business, we can expect robust job growth in virtually every sector of the economy this year. Colorado is ranked among the top 5 states in the entire country for business, for careers, for job growth. 4 of the top 10 and 5 of the top 20 communities in the country for startups are here in Colorado: Boulder, Fort Collins, Denver, Colorado Springs, and Grand Junction. We are also one of the very best environments in the country for small businesses. According to the Kauffman Foundation, when it comes to creating a small business climate, this year Colorado earned a grade of A, and that's up from B+ in 2012. And people like what's happening here. Colorado hosted a record number of tourists this year. We even welcomed more hunters than last year. Agriculture employing 173,000 people keeps our economy strong, last year contributing $41 billion to the state economy. Between 2009 and 2013, Colorado agricultural exports increased by almost 80%. The fact that our state is strong and growing stronger is no accident. In Colorado, we work for our luck. Shortly after we took office 3 years ago, we launched a strategy to be a thoughtful and supportive partner with the business community. We reached out and built relationships with people in 14 regions all around the state, and based on what we heard, we designed a Colorado blueprint that focused on 6 core objectives: build a business-friendly environment, increase access to capital, educate and train the workforce of tomorrow, retain, grow, recruit companies, cultivate innovation and technology, and create a stronger Colorado brand. Now, because we know that economic hard times have been especially hard in some rural communities, this past year we launched the Rural Economic Development Grant Program and are in the process of awarding $3 million to our rural communities. One of the recipients is here today with us, Keith Burdorf, with a $350,000 grant awarded to TK Mining in Delta County, and his company is going to be able to double in size to up to 10 employees, we're adding up to 10 employees, which will have a significant effect in that part of the state. Together, we launched the Advanced Industries Accelerator Program, making seed capital available to startup companies in aerospace, engineering, advanced manufacturing, biosciences, electronics, energy, and tech. We created a unified brand logo, which is almost universally loved. But 200 companies have requested to use the brand already, and 117 of Colorado's companies are already using it. We launched COIN, the Colorado Innovation Network, which brings together innovative thinkers and entrepreneurs from around the state. We expanded the Biennial of the Americas, which is rapidly growing into something like a Colorado's Worlds or Hemispheric Fair. We created the Pedal the Plains Tour to promote all of the beauty and opportunity that some of Colorado's most gorgeous rural communities possess. With labor and business working together, we passed legislation that made the state contracting process more transparent while making it easier for Colorado firms and Colorado workers to secure state contracts. When there's work to be done in Colorado, for Colorado, we should look to skilled Coloradans first. My friends, when it came to job growth, in 2010, this state was ranked 40th in the nation. Now, 3 years later, Colorado is the 4th fastest job growth state in the country. 40th to 4th. 40th to 4th. Since January 2010, we have added 170,000 jobs. In 2010, companies were leaving Colorado. Today, they're moving here. And while we're disappointed whenever a company leaves this state, Colorado is gaining employers and gaining jobs. 3 Fortune 500 companies have decided to call Colorado home, along with 26 additional companies, and your budget decisions played a significant role in that success. One of the most recent companies to establish headquarters in Colorado is Ardent Mills. While we were peddling the plains, we got to talking with our friend Darrell Hannafin of the wheat growers. Darrell told us that 2 of the nation's leading flour milling companies, ConAgra Mills and Horizon Milling, were forming a joint venture, Ardent Mills. They were 6 months into a search for a new headquarters, and Colorado hadn't made the final cut. But undeterred, Darrell requested that I call the executives of this new company. In roughly a month, Darrell and his team helped us persuade Ardent Mills to locate their company headquarters here in Colorado. We pointed out again and again that Colorado is a place to find more by its future than its past, which is clearly the case with Ardent Mills. Landing Ardent Mills is a little like winning the Super Bowl, or at least the Flour Bowl, especially for rural communities. And it all began with the Colorado blueprint relationships that we forged across the state. We have Bill Stauffer, who is here with us today, the Chief Operating Officer, and Brad Berenson, who will be the Chief Financial Officer of this new company. Thank you. Brad and Bill, you have the support of everyone in this room to help make Ardent Mills the most innovative and successful milling operation on earth. The economic infusion and energy of Colorado's new companies, along with the hard work of Colorado's entire business community, has gone a long way to take Colorado past pre-recession job numbers. The unemployment rate in Colorado has dropped from 9% in 2010 to 6.5%, outpacing the national rate. Unemployment in both Grand Junction and Greeley has dropped by even more, by more than 30%. But let's be clear, the unemployment rate is not low enough. And all of us, everyone in this room, share a commitment to keep a statewide focus on this issue. More jobs all over Colorado is all of our highest priority. As many of you know, I took what you might call an unconventional path in running for office. I started out in Colorado as a geologist, and during a downturn, everyone in our company got laid off. Next thing I knew, I was making beer, starting a brew pub business. It turned out pretty well. But as every small business person knows, it's not easy out there, especially when bureaucracy gets in the way. I didn't run for public office until I was 50. Before that, I'd never run for anything, not even in high school. I ran for public office as a small businessman. I thought government needed to operate with more common sense and less nonsense. So while we have been doing all we can to make it as easy as possible for business to succeed in Colorado, we have also been streamlining the state government, making it more efficient. 3 years ago, we started with a budget that was facing staggering shortfalls. Balancing the books is not sexy stuff, but if the budget is wrong, nothing else could be right. Just ask Congress. When it comes to this nitty-gritty of governing, you could say we borrowed the motto, be prepared. We have funded core priorities while preparing for future needs and unforeseen events. Because together, we have made hard choices, been disciplined, not spent more than we have. We put ourselves in the position to save more money for rainy days. And as we've seen, when we get rain, it can be biblical and come all at once. The single most critical factor in Colorado being able to stay open for business throughout the hellfires and high waters has been our reserves. 3 years ago, Colorado was setting aside only about 2% of its general fund money for reserves. That 2% gave the state only a 7-day cushion. Last year, we more than doubled that rate to 5%. Our budget request this year is to grow the fund to 6.5%. At the same time, we have shored up our Tabor reserves to $48 million and are requesting that they be increased this year to $78 million. This money in reserve is what has enabled us to respond quickly to the disasters and get assistance to our local partners. It's what enabled us to get roads rebuilt and open ahead of schedule. If you were to have asked almost anyone in Jamestown, Estes Park, or Milliken, if they thought we had a snowball's chance of getting those roads open by December 1st, they would have laughed out loud. Some did laugh out loud. But it's because of the cooperation of the bipartisan Joint Budget Committee that we've been able to have the resources to build this budgetary bedrock. DC should be looking at our JBC to see how collaboration gets done. To ensure that we are maximizing state resources and providing as responsive consumer service as possible, we've gotten lean. Lean, as many of you know, is a type of business audit that scours operations, looking for ways to make processes run more efficiently. We have reevaluated how every state agency does business, and we have initiated more than 100 new lean processes, more than any state in America. Colorado's Department of Transportation recently reported a 19% decrease in contracting timelines. Combined with other improvements, their efforts are saving more than $2 million a year. In 2008, only 33% of property assessment appeals were resolved within 1 year. Now 79% are. The Division of Real Estate reduced the average time it takes to complete an investigation of a mortgage loan by 44%. And these are only a few examples of our lean customer service where we're doing what we can and should be doing, responding quickly and effectively when needed, and then getting out of the way. We're lean, but we're only getting started. One of the places where just about all Coloradans frequently become aggravated is at the Department of Motor Vehicles. Our DMV has made great strides, but they have done so with a computer system that is nearly 3 decades old. While many of us play around on our iPhones while waiting in line at the DMV, the employees are struggling to update the files in MS-DOS. Our budget aims to change that. This will reduce the average wait time in DMV offices throughout the state from 60 minutes to 15. Through a statewide effort called Pits and Peeves, we have also reviewed, modified, or repealed nearly 11,000 state rules, many of which were redundant and flat out dumb. And we launched the Responsible Acceleration of Maintenance and Partnerships program, RAMP, a more nimble CDOT operation that is on its way to freeing up $300 million annually for 5 years to be used for accelerated construction. The smarter way of doing business is what enabled us to deliver on our promise to complete the eastbound Twin Tunnels project, the first capacity increase on this stretch of I-70 since the road was opened in 1961. Just about every one of us has sat in a car at some time on a way to or from the mountains, frustrated or even worse, stuck in traffic with a kid needing to find a restroom, right? This project will reduce travel times significantly during peak Sunday hours and decrease the number of crashes in the area by more than 1/3. The second twin tunnel project, the westbound lanes, will be completed by this time next year. And then there's Kathy Nesbitt. 2 years ago, a full third of state workers were approaching retirement, and the state's hiring system was 92 years old and loaded with countless hurdles to prevent us from hiring the best people. Kathy is the executive director of the Department of Personnel and Administration. She and her team successfully created a talent agenda and worked to pass a bipartisan bill to reform our personnel system. Supervisors can now focus on finding the best talent. Merit pay is now based not only on an employee's seniority, but also on performance. Hiring times, which previously had taken 3 months, already have been cut in half. Just weeks ago, Kathy was recognized as one of only 9 recipients of Governing Magazine's Public Officials of the Year Award, which is something akin to an Oscar for Best Starring Role in Cutting Red Tape. Thank you, Kathy. Moving forward, our priorities are clear. We're going to remain focused on jobs, education, ensuring that we have a state that is as healthy as it is fiscally sound. We're going to continue to improve Colorado's customer service and efficiency and support our military families. 14 years into the 21st century is well past time to reform our telecommunication laws. This session, we ask your help to pass legislation that will accomplish this, but at the same time, rural and other unserved parts of our state should have broadband internet access as urban areas. With your help, this year we will extend the job creation tax credit from 5 years to 7, enabling more businesses to maintain employees and hire new ones. Economic development also demands infrastructure. We will propose the formation of a nonprofit enterprise dedicated to fostering public-private relationships to fund infrastructure projects such as transportation and water. This will not only bolster economic development, it will also lighten the burden on taxpayers and harness minds and resources outside of government to address unmet needs and keep Colorado competitive. Such partnerships offer a path towards financing solutions to existing challenges, such as traffic congestion in places like Fort Collins and Colorado Springs. In the wake of the floods, we proved our ability and our commitment to rebuild bridges and roads. We've seen what can happen when we lose that infrastructure. But the single most important investment we can make in infrastructure is in our bridges to tomorrow, our children. We must support effective teachers, students, and parents. We must find a way to address key reforms that have already made Colorado a national model. Colorado's voters made clear they will not make new investments in education until they are convinced that current resources are being prudently managed. We're going to request that the General Assembly fund a plan to make the budget of every public school transparent. Let's put the numbers on the internet and make the web a window. Under the current statewide public education funding system, a school's funding is based on an enrollment which is counted on a single day early in the school year. We're also going to ask the General Assembly to pass legislation that will ensure a more accurate assessment by counting average daily membership in our schools. It's nonsense not to have such a powerful economic incentive to have everyone focused on student retention. While we are choosing to adhere to the prudent budgetary strategy that has been the cornerstone of our policy, this year we are seeking an increase in per-pupil funding of $223 for a total of $400 per pupil over the last 2 years. We are also requesting a significant investment in higher education. In recent years, tuition has been steadily increasing by a rate of double digits. Please join me in supporting our request for an additional $100 million for higher education, which would allow us to cap tuition increases at 6% and put college within the reach of more families. Another priority for Colorado families and for us is supporting the energy industry while protecting the environment. The viability of the sage grouse has bedeviled Western governors and Western states for a decade. As chair of the Western Governors Association, I believe we can protect the sage grouse while at the same time allowing ranches, farms, and other economic activity to flourish. At our invitation, Secretary of the Interior, Sally Jewell, has agreed to visit Colorado and observe mitigation efforts firsthand. Colorado's oil and gas industry contributes $29 billion to our economy. Critical to the success of the oil and gas industry is that operators recognize their moral and legal obligation to protect our air and water. Fortunately, we've been able to bring many in the industry together with the environmental community and our legislators to work toward solutions. As a result, Colorado is a national leader in developing a strong regulatory environment. We brokered the nation's strongest frac fluid disclosure rule in 2011. We're proposing the nation's first ever methane capture rule, making Colorado the leader in the nation for controlling emissions. We've said before that we're committed to holding the oil companies to the highest standards to protect Coloradans and our air and water. To that end, we're working with legislators, industry, and the conservation community to ensure we pass a bill this year that will strengthen penalties for violations of permits and rules. Now, if words were water, the state would never run dry. Our budget is requesting a second year of funding to help create cleaner water for Colorado. This year, we will also complete the Colorado Water Plan, which will emphasize conservation, address incremental storage, and address drought mitigation. We must create alternative choices to buy and dry. No matter where we live, we cannot afford to let our farm and ranch land dry up. Part of what has gotten overlooked in the debate about our guns is our work on mental health. When you look at the massacres at Columbine High School and the Aurora Movie Theater and the tragedies of Platte Canyon High School and most recently at Arapahoe High School, guns are only a piece of the puzzle. Another clear piece is mental health. Trying to identify and assist those who are feeling isolated, bullied, the mentally ill, and trite as this may sound, those who are feeling abandoned and unloved. We allocated more than $30 million to create and bolster programs such as school-based mental health services, behavioral health community centers, and to train and staff round-the-clock mental health crisis centers. We repurposed Fort Lyon, where right now there are some 80 people with addictions who are getting clean, learning a skill, and turning their life around. People who otherwise would have been on the street. Just as we must implement the voters' wishes on marijuana, we're obligated to make sure that parents and children understand brain development and the risks of underage use. We are committed to securing a safe, regulated, and responsible environment. This is going to be one of the great social experiments of this century. And while not all of us chose it or supported it, being first means that we all share a responsibility to do it properly. Part of being the healthiest state means we continue to prioritize services for the most vulnerable. We ask for your support for Coloradans with developmental disabilities and their caregivers, including addressing the current wait list, family support services, and transitional services. In that vein, the General Assembly, with bipartisan support, created Connect for Colorado. While other states have struggled with enrollment and implementation, Colorado has outperformed the national exchange in most states. More than 139,000 residents now have health insurance who didn't have it before. In addition to being the healthiest state, we have consistently worked to be the most military-friendly state. We must continue to honor military veterans. Not so long ago, really almost out of the blue, I was hand-delivered a letter by Sylvia Buonacati. It was about her son, Frank. Frank was a Chief Warrant Officer, 3rd Class, United States Army, a helicopter pilot. Among the many honors Frank received was the Distinguished Flying Cross, one of the highest awards an aviator can receive for heroism in combat. Frank saved the lives of 2 special operations teams. He died in a helicopter crash in 2011 while training in Washington State. But because he did not die in a combat zone, according to current state law, Sylvia and her husband Frank are not eligible to receive a Colorado Fallen Service Member license plate. Sylvia is not the only Gold Star mother waiting for this recognition. For families of veterans like Frank, this law must change. Sylvia is here with her husband Frank. We are deeply grateful for your son's service and commend you for your commitment to making sure it's recognized. As I wrap up here and we begin this session, I have one more ask of you, of us, really. You don't need a poll to know that regardless of political leanings, the typical American, the average Coloradan, doesn't think much of politics or politicians. And who can blame them? Shutdowns, debt ceiling, duels, parties locked down, unwilling to compromise, so much negativity. The public sees politicians as operators who put their own self-interest or their party's agenda above the people, and who are obsessed with petty pursuits and ignore the public service part of being a public servant. The widely held perception today is that politicians divide and selfishly scheme in the moment, whereas public servants unite and plan for the greater good. Over the course of the last year, everyone in this room has been tested. Time and again, you chose to put your communities and your fellow Coloradans first. You chose to be public servants before being politicians. We must continue to rebuild better than we were before, but our work is about much more than just recovery. Whether we live in a mountain community or in a city, whether we're surrounded by cows or by concrete, we all want the same things. The chance to earn a good wage, give our children a decent education, clean air and clean water. Vigorous debate is our ally. Partisanship is not. Skepticism is productive. Corrosive cynicism is not. So as we begin this session, my ask is that we try to ignore divisive politics. No one needs to remind us we're going into a political season. And I realize it's such a goal for a session. If it ever seemed ambitious, it's a time like this. But that's precisely why we should set such a goal. Tom Clements was someone who set such ambitious goals. It's been not quite a year since Tom's death. A few months ago, I spoke at a convention of the International Association of Corrections that was held in Colorado Springs. I described that when Tom was murdered, he was in the midst of major overhauls to the Department of Corrections. He was reforming administrative segregation, which most of us recognize as solitary confinement, and he was about to re-engineer the parole system. Tom saw the entrenched problems, but he never gave up. He saw what could and what should be done. His philosophies and strategies were never about locking people up, but rather everything Tom did, really everything in his whole life, was about striving to unlock humanity. It's a tragic, awful irony that an inmate put on the streets directly from administrative segregation showed up at his door and killed him. But that is not what defines Tom. Part of Tom's legacy is everything that was discussed at that convention. I mean, these were directors of correctional facilities, people who worked in worlds of barbed wire filled with violent criminals, yet the topics of discussion were things like alternatives for mentally disordered offenders, giving up crime, and faith-based programming. In other words, it was about unlocking humanity. And it wasn't a coincidence. The theme of the convention was inspired by Tom and was very much in his honor. The other part of Tom's legacy is his family, his wife Lisa, daughters Sarah and Rachel, who are with us today. Tom's story and life is not defined by what happened to him, but by the immense good he achieved and his legacy of love and compassion and reform, his legacy of public service. Tom was a public servant. Tom walked the walk of public service every day. Inexplicable, senseless violence, fires, floods. No, that's not our story. Our story is about how we came together and have been getting it done. Our story is that we have learned that we are at our best, that Colorado is at her best when we are connected to one another, working together. Our story is us. That is what it means to be a Coloradan. That is what we have and will continue to show the world. I'm all in. To keep Colorado strong and keep Colorado united, all of us in here, and all of our fellow Coloradans out there, every one of us needs to be all in, together. Thank you, and God bless Colorado.
Thank you. Governor Hickenlooper, would the committee please escort the governor to his chambers?